All right, these are the answers to the recursive explicit quiz review that we're going to have tomorrow. So the first ones are asking for the first three terms based on the sequence you see. For the first one, this is a recursive. They're actually telling you the first term. The first term is 15. And then they're telling you the pattern. The pattern is to add 10. So we just take the 15 and we add 10 to it. Add 10 to it. And that's all we do for a recursive. For the second one, they're giving it an explicit. And so what we'll want to do is just go ahead and put 1, 2, and 3 in for n. So if I put 1 in there, I get negative 5 times 1, negative 5 plus 24. That gives me 19. If I put 2 in, negative 5 times 2 is negative 10. Negative 10 plus 24 is 14. And I could do the same thing here for the 3, or I can see that the negative 5 is the pattern. 24 was that 0 term. And so if I subtract 5 from the 0 term, I get first, second, third. I can kind of go that way too. For number 3, same idea. I have an explicit, so I'm just going to put 1, 2, and 3 in here. So if I put 1 in, I get 4 to the 1 minus 1. I get 4 to the 0. If you do that on a calculator, you'll always get 1. Anything to the 0 power will give us 1. If I put 2 in, 4 to the 2 minus 1, 4 to the first power will give me 4. And if I put 3 in, 4 to the second power will give me 16. Or I can see this as 1 times 4. 1 would be the first term, 4 would be my multiplier. I could kind of look at it that way too. All right, then they give us a sequence here, and they want us to find a couple of terms, and then when does it equal a certain things. Now, our options are, we have a couple here. We could put 1 in for n, and we would get negative 4. We could put 2 in for n, and we get positive 4. We could put 3 in for n. We would get 12, and we would start to see a pattern. We'd see that 8 is our pattern. We're adding 8. Negative 12 is that 0 term. And so we could just keep adding 8 and go that way if we wanted to. If we thought that was easier than doing some other equations, that's always an option. But for this, if I want the 8th term, it is as easy as just putting 8 in for n. Go 8 times 8 minus 12. That's 64 minus 12, which gives us 52. Or if I want the 20th term, same thing. Go 8 times 20 minus 12. That's 160 minus 12, which is 148. Okay? So it can be just that simple if we want it to be. Now, in terms of when is what term would give us 68 or 108, again, you can keep going and then count which term gave us that, or we can set that term equal to the general term like this, add 12, we get 80 equal to 8n, and then divide by 8, and we get n equal to 10. So the 10th term would be 68. Okay? Or same thing here, we can put 108 down, add 12, we get 120 equals 8n, divide by 8, and we end up with n equal to 15. So we can go some different ways there if we want, depending on which way we think is easiest. Now we're writing equations. We're writing recursive and explicit equations for a given sequence. So here we see 10, 18, 26, 34. First thing we got to do is figure out what the pattern is. And in this case, I can see that if we add 8 to each term, we get the next term, the next term, the next term. So adding 8 is our pattern there. So in terms of writing it in recursive, the pattern is what goes next to the a sub n. So we'll put a plus 8 there. And a sub 1 is just simply your first term. So the first term in our sequence was 10. So the recursive is pretty simple. Put down your pattern here and put down the first term. Now, because this was plus 8, plus 8, plus 8, this is an arithmetic sequence. And therefore, the arithmetic sequence is going to have its own special kind of explicit. And what we want to know on the arithmetic is that we put the pattern in front of n, acts like our slope, and we put that 0 term here. So looking back, plus 8 was the pattern, so 8's going to go right there. And if we were to bring this back to the 0 term, what was right here, we would come back to 2. And it's the only thing we got to remember with the explicit on there. Use the note sheet to help you, but we got to make sure not to put the first term there, but to actually put that 0 term. Same thing here. If I look at this one is subtracting 10, subtracting 10, subtracting 10. So as far as the recursive goes, the pattern is minus 10. The first term is 44. This is still arithmetic because we subtracted, right? And so in terms of here, my pattern is going right in front of the n. So it'll be negative 10 times n. And then I have that 0 term. So I got to come back 1. If I come back 1, I'm at 54. So that'll be my explicit for that. So again, use the note sheet. The note sheet gives you the instruction, the guide to how to fill this in and stuff. It's not as hard as it might look. Now, when we come to these here, we've had a little bit of a change. Now we're multiplying by 8, multiply by 8, multiply by 8. So as far as the recursive goes, the pattern is times 8, and the first term was 1. So that's not too different. The recursive, again, is pretty simple. It works whether it's geometric or arithmetic. But the explicit is a little different. This was a geometric sequence because we multiplied. So what we got to remember is that in front here is our first term. Our first term was 1. Here is the pattern. What did you multiply by? We multiplied by 8. So this would be my explicit. A sub n is 1 times 8 to the n minus 1. Similar here, we see that we're dividing by 5, dividing by 5. Okay? So when we come to here, we can say this is a sub n divided by 5, and the first term was 500. All right, so that's nice again. Pretty consistent no matter what you're looking at. As far as the explicit goes, our first term was 500, so that's going in front of here. Now I want to do dividing by 5, but I don't want to write dividing by 5. That looks a little tacky. So the best way to do that is to write this as a 1/5. So that's kind of looks like dividing by 5, and that puts it into this form pretty nicely. Again, because we were dividing, anytime we multiply or divide, we're talking about a geometric sequence. Okay. So there's your review. And again, the note sheet will help guide you through a lot of this as well. Hopefully that helps. And we'll review a little bit before the quiz tomorrow.